Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about my fifth game at the San Diego Club Championship U1400 division. There's only one game left after this one, and I'm currently in fourth place in my division, so if I want to have a chance to kind of win or get close to there, I have a little bit of work to do still. So let's just jump right into the game. I was playing with black, and it started d4, d5, and then knight c3 was played by white, so there's not going to be any kind of queen's gambit here, which is normally what I see after d4. But we continue developing, and we develop our bishops, and then I saw f3, and now this is definitely out of my comfort zone, I guess you would say, or normal realm of openings for myself, at least, after f3, which is typically not a move that's played. So I just played e6, and I was expecting my opponent, for some reason, to try to play e4, which doesn't work here, but of course they can also play g4, attacking my bishop with the support of the f3 pawn. So I retreated the bishop, and then h4 was played. So this is super aggressive here with pawn pushing, and obviously if I don't respect this, then h5 is coming and my bishop's going to be trapped. So I've got to respond to that, and I can either play h6 or h5. I decided to play h5 because after this kind of coaxes the pawn to move forward. I don't mind moving my knight away here, and I feel like maybe these pawns are a little bit overextended, but we'll see. So after that, my opponent played knight to b5, doubling up, attacking, putting pressure on this c7 pawn. And, a lot of times we see this on the f pawn because the f pawn is only defended by the king. But this does work to a lesser extent, I guess, with the queen as well, because the queen is not a good defender. You don't want to give up your queen for two minor pieces, obviously. So I did have to respond to this, and I played knight to a6. e3 was played, and I played c6, kind of kicking that knight away. And after the knight retreats, the other positive, I guess, of c6 is that it's opening up a diagonal, some squares for my queen to move to. So after the knight retreated, I played queen to b6, attacking this pawn. My opponent played knight to a4, so he's continuing with the aggression here. And so he's attacking the queen and also defending that pawn. And here I saw that there was a couple of checks against the king, and I would say this was probably my first little mini mistake in the game. I played queen to b4 check and attacking the knight. I was expecting the knight probably just to go back. But of course, after c3, it blocks the check, attacks my queen, and opens up a defense of the knight here with my opponent's queen. So at this point, my queen seems kind of misplaced, obviously, here. So I just retreated her all the way back to e7. A little bit of a mistake, not the end of the world, but it does kind of lock in my bishop for the time being. So my opponent developed his bishop, we traded bishops, and I played b5, attacking the knight. And it looks at first glance, and actually to me, that this was trapping the knight, because the knight really doesn't have anywhere to go. The knight can go here, but I've got two knights here and the queen here, so I should, if the knight moves here, I would be winning a pawn. But there's a little bit of a problem with this. My opponent played b4, and then I realized that if I take this knight, well, my knight's hanging as well. So we're trading knights, but not only are we trading knights, this is not good for black because this queen has infiltrated my position here. She's attacking the pawn here. More importantly, she's attacking this c6 pawn, which is, I think, more crucial to my position. And it's just, not good for black here. So I noticed that, and I did not want to make this trade. So instead, I decided to play e5. I felt like my position was a little cramped. Need to grab some space in the center. So that's what I did, and we went ahead and traded some pieces here. And I finally got my queen centralized, and I finally gave some breathing room for my bishop as well. So let's see how this continues. So my opponent played knight to b2. You may have noticed the eval bar drop a little bit there. And this is a little tactic that I did not spot in the game. But if you guys want, you can pause the video, or just if you see it right away, try to see if you can figure out what the move is for black here in this position. I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, so the move, if you noticed, is grabbing the pawn here on b4, either with the bishop or the knight, because this pawn here is shielding that knight on b2. And since my opponent also hasn't castled, this rook would also be under attack at that point. So let's say I grab with the bishop, which I think is the best move. Let's say my opponent grabs back. I grab the knight, and if my opponent tries to trade here, we have this dirty move, knight to b4, ignoring defending the queen, because if the queen grabs my queen, then we actually have a fork here of the king and the queen. So it's pretty dirty, pretty high level stuff. But yeah, I didn't see that tactic at this, in this moment in the game. However, I did see a way that I could win a pawn in a different way, and clearly not as good of a way. This kind of started a couple of mistakes here for me, a couple of misplays, I would say, with the queen, hence the adventure. So I checked the king. The king really only had one move, and I noticed that I could check the king again and then win this pawn on f3. And that's exactly what I did, but the problem with this is it allows my opponent to get a lot of initiative in the position and start piling up pressure on me. And, this king is in the center of the board, but this king seems pretty safe for the moment. My king definitely seems a little bit less safe, especially after a couple of moves here. And I think this is something that I need to clean up in my own game generally is a lot of times I do send my queen forward, and I may be able to win a pawn or two pawns, but a lot of times it puts me in a little bit of a bind early in games. And this kind of reminds me of the first game of this championship. I didn't even win a pawn there, but I went on some adventures with my queen. And if you guys haven't seen that, definitely check out the first game from this tournament. Had some fun times with my queen there as well. But let's continue here. So after I capture this pawn on f3, the obvious logical move for white is to attack the queen with the rook, right? So that's what my opponent did. I played queen to g4, and the best move by far in this position for white would have been rook to f4, attacking the queen again and preparing to double up the rooks on this f file right next to my king here. And now you can see that it looks very dangerous for the king. But my opponent did not play that move, thankfully for me. He played knight to d4, getting the knight in the center, attacking the c6 pawn. I used this opportunity to get my queen out of the crossfire, bring her back to d7, defending. And my opponent played e4. And this is another kind of crucial point in the game here for me. So the actual best moves in the position would have been knight to c7, or actually queenside castling. And I was thinking about castling queenside. I didn't like the look of it because of all these pawns moved forward, but really queenside castling would have made my king far safer than this position on e8 here. As we've already kind of been discussing a little bit, this is not a safe position. I should have noticed this and just castled queenside, but instead I played rook to d8. Of course, queenside castling would have gotten my rook onto d8 also, but my king would have been a little bit safer. So a bit of a mistake. But again, my opponent didn't fully capitalize on the mistake that I made. So the way to capitalize on this for white would be to continue pushing these pawns. So actually g6 I think would have been the best. Obviously putting some pressure here. And after I push my pawn forward, just continuing to push these pawns. So if I grab this, my opponent would have been able to infiltrate with the rook here, attacking the queen. He would have been able to swing the other rook over, get this other queen into the game. It would have been difficult for me with my king sitting here in the middle. But my opponent kind of played into my hands a little bit here. He did not do that. He just captured the pawn on d5. And after I grabbed the pawn, he even offered a queen trade. So this is another lesson, and I'm sure I've said this many times, but when you're on the attack, when you're on the offensive, you do not want to trade queens. The queen is obviously the most important attacking piece, and we have to remember also that I'm still up a pawn. So when all things being, at the end of the day, if all these pieces are traded away, I'm going to be up a pawn in the endgame. So not the best idea from white here. But as you may have also noticed, he's not only offering a trade of queens here, there's actually a better move for me now. And for the first time in this game, I'm a little bit ahead again. So if you want, you can pause the video again and see if there's another little tactic here. A little hint, it's very similar to the one that we had first. So I'll give you a few seconds and I'll let you know. Okay, So the move is, again, this b4 pawn. And this pawn, unfortunately, is a little bit overloaded. And it's a little bit worse now for white if I grab this, because if they take back, I win the knight here, but I also deliver a check onto my opponent's king. So that's what I did. I grabbed the pawn with the knight. I could have done it with the bishop too, but I just figured this knight wasn't really doing anything in the corner. I wanted to get it into the game. So I grabbed the pawn. My opponent gives me a check on e1, and I just simply block with the bishop. And I think white was a little bit flustered here. He told me after the game that he thought there was some type of forced checkmate in this position. So he actually, after I blocked with the bishop, he just grabbed the bishop with the rook. I, of course, took back with the king. He delivered another check, but I think my opponent missed that I can just simply retreat my king onto f8, and there's really not a whole lot else for the moment that my opponent can do. And it's also very important that this knight is pinned to my opponent's king, who, of course, is also vulnerable in this position. If this knight wasn't pinned, this knight could jump in here, this pawn would be pinned, it would be a kind of a disaster, but this is really holding my position together. So after that little exchange, I'm up even more material. My opponent wants to keep fighting, so he plays rook to e5, which is a good move, keeping the pressure on. I noticed that the a2 pawn was hanging here, and not only would I be able to take that pawn, but then this knight would be pinned, this knight would be under attack, and if we just play this out, you actually can see that both knights here would be pinned in this position, which is kind of funny. But I actually felt that I was up enough material, and what I really wanted to do is just not get checkmated here. I wanted to kind of trade down, because I was feeling a little bit, with these pieces close to my king, I just wanted to make it, to simplify, essentially. So I played queen to d7, offering the trade. And my opponent here played another move here that I think was inaccurate, because this just further simplifies the position that we have that I'm already winning in. So after knight to d3, I guess maybe what he was thinking, now that I think about it, was trying to unpin this knight that can jump in here. But of course, he's offering me all these trades. So I trade queens, and of course, also my opponent can't take with the knight, because then we've got bigger issues for white here. So he takes with the rook. We trade knights as well. And at this point, I'm up material, and there's only one other thing I need to really accomplish to get the W in this game, which is activate this rook who's been sitting in the corner for the entire game, unable to do anything. So I played g6. I'm basically preparing to move my king out of the way and use this open file for my rook. But here, after g6, my opponent played f6, or rook f6, sorry. And for the final time in this position, see if you can capitalize on this, because this move is a mistake, and it's not simply moving the king away. So if you'd like to pause the video one more time, see if you can figure out the final dagger in this game to end it. Alright, so the move is c5. So this knight is still pinned to the king, cannot move, and after the rook gives up its defense of the 5th rank, I'm now able to play this. Otherwise, the rook would have simply been able to just take that pawn. I was finally able to play c5, trapping the knight, winning the knight, and it was in this position that my opponent resigned the game. So I think this was probably my sloppiest game of the tournament, probably besides the first game earlier, early game in the first game. I think the theme of this game, the biggest issue that I had was probably grabbing this pawn. Otherwise, I had a good game here. Instead, obviously, in this position, I should have seen this tactic here, but otherwise, I could have castled, I could have developed the bishop. It's really not worth winning a pawn with your queen, to put your queen in danger and put your king in danger, especially when you're on castle. So I think it's another lesson that I need to continue to get beaten into me, so that I don't keep making moves like this. But besides that, it was a good game, and hopefully I will end the tournament on a good note next week. So I'll see you guys there, and thanks for watching.